Hello everyone and welcome back to another Blender Made Easy tutorial. Today we're going to be creating a fluid simulation in Eevee. So if you haven't done it already, go down in the description and download the Blender beta. Once you have that installed, we can start. So the first thing that we're going to be doing is getting our scene set up, and then we'll start messing around with the fluid simulation settings. So first off, with this default cube, I'm going to go into edit mode, right click on this corner vertice, press X and delete it. Next, go out of edit mode and scale this up. This is going to be our background for our fluid simulation, so we'll have the fluid right here and then we can just see the background. I'll scale this down a little bit, scale it up maybe a little bit more, and drag it upwards. Next, I'm going to add in the domain, so press Shift A, go to Mesh and then Cube. Scale this cube up to the size that you want. I'm probably going to go about this tall, scale it down along the Z a little bit, then I'll press S, X, and scale it along the X axis. Something like this. I think that'll be fine. Next, I'm going to add in a pipe over on this side, so it will look like there's water flowing out of it. To do that, I'm going to press Shift A, go to Mesh, and then Cylinder. Go into Front View, rotate this cylinder 90 degrees, and then place it over on this side. I'll zoom in here and I'll scale it down. Then I'll press S, X, and scale it outwards. Okay, that looks pretty good and it's already in the center, which is good. Next, I'm going to go into wireframe, so press Z and then hover your mouse over the wireframe option and it will go into wireframe. Go into edit mode on this cube, or on this cylinder I mean, hold Alt and right click on this edge and it will select that loop. Then you can press Shift D, right click, P, and go Selection. Then go out of edit mode, right click on what you just duplicated. You can scale this down a little bit. Then go edit mode, A to select everything, and extrude it outwards. Okay, one more thing that we need to do with this other cylinder, we have it selected, is to go into edit mode, Alt right click on that ring again, and go I to inset, we'll just inset it a little bit, then E to extrude, and we'll drag it backwards. Alright, so now if we go into solid view, we can see our pipe right here. Now I'm going to scale this one down just a little bit more so there's a small gap in between the edges. Alright, that looks pretty good. And make sure it is inside the domain. You don't want to have it back this way, you want to make sure it's inside the domain. Okay, there we go. So now we are ready to set up the fluid simulation settings. So right click on your domain, go over to the physics settings, select fluid, and then set the type to domain right here. The final resolution, we can set this to 160. I found that that's a decent resolution. You can go higher if you want to, but the baking will take a lot longer. The viewport preview, I want to be able to see what this looks like, so I'm going to set this to final. Now the time start and end, this is where you determine how long your animation is going to be. So if we are over 250 frames, which is the animation that we're going to be using, we need to divide the frame rate by how many frames there are in our animation. So let's open up the calculator, we can just go right here, and we have 250 frames. To check the frame rate of your animation, you can go over to the output settings and check frame rate, and as we can see it's currently at 24. So if we open up our calculator, we can go 250 divided by 24, and then we can see that it's 10 seconds, 10.4 seconds. So the end time right here we can set to 10.4, and this will give us a accurate simulation. Now that we've done that, we can open up the boundary settings. Here is where we can set the subdivisions and the particles. So if we set the subdivisions up to 2, we'll be able to see some particles. If you don't set it to anything, it'll just be smooth and there won't be any particles around. So if we set that up to 2, we can see them. Now if we open up the particle tab, this is where we set the amount of particles that we would want. So currently it's at 0 and there won't be any, but if we set this to maybe a value of 0.03, actually let's go 0.01. I don't want a ton of particles, just a little bit. If you set this to a higher value, it will give more, but I found that just even setting it to like 0.1, it goes crazy, so I'm just going to leave it at 0.01. There we go. Everything else is good to go, I think. Yep, the world settings, we don't need to mess around with that. Okay, so now let's right click on our pipe and go fluid and set this to obstacle. Next, let's go into wireframe and then right click on this cylinder inside here. We can go fluid and set the type to inflow right here. So now this will be constantly adding fluid into our scene. So right now the velocity is set to 0, so that means the fluid will just kind of drip over here and it won't go anywhere. To make sure that this is like a big stream, I'm going to be setting this to a value of, let's go with 7.5. There we go. And so now with a velocity of 7.5 along the X, this will go out and probably land somewhere over, oh, hold on. It'll probably land somewhere over here. If we set this Z to a higher number, it would go up and then down, but I'm just going to leave it at the X for 7.5. Also, another thing that I forgot to do with the pipe, I'm going to be setting the slip to free slip. So this means that no fluid will be sticking to the inside of the pipe, it'll just all flow out. Alright, there we go. I think we're good to do the bake. Before we do that though, I'm going to set the scale of our domain. So to do that, you can press Ctrl A and apply the scale. Do that for the pipe and for the inflow, just to make sure everything is good to go. So Ctrl A, click on scale. Now that we've done that, we can bake in our scene. So open up the bake settings. We can set a cache output right here. I'm going to set it in this folder and click accept. And now that we've done that, we can hit bake. Okay, so now let's go into solid view and just take a look at our simulation. So if we scroll through here, we can see that it comes down. There's a decent amount of particles and it looks pretty nice. And then it piles up over time, just like this. Not too bad. Okay, so let's set up the camera view and figure out the materials for our scene. So first off, I'll probably go right around here or so with the camera. I'm going to hit Ctrl-Alt-0 to snap it into place. You can right click on your camera, G, middle mouse button, and just drag it backwards. Okay, so let's right click on our domain. The first thing I'm going to do is apply the smooth shading, and it used to be in the toolbar, but now what you have to do is hit the F3 key and type in the word smooth, and then go shade smooth. There we go. Next, let's set up the material. So go over to the material tab and hit new. You can, if you want to, change this to the glass shader, but you can also do the same thing with the principled shader. If you scroll down all the way to the transmission, if you turn that all the way up to 1, it'll now be a glass material. The IOR right here, we're going to be setting this to 1.333 because that is the IOR of water, and so we'll put it there. Another thing I want to do is make sure the roughness is set to 0, and the blend mode down here, to be able to actually see through it, I'm going to be setting this to alpha blend. If we press Shift Z, you still won't be able to see anything. It still looks pretty bad, and the reason for that is because we need to go to the output settings over here, the render settings I mean, and turn on screen space reflections. If we open this up and turn on refraction, go back to the material and turn on screen space refraction over here, all of those options, now we will be able to see through our fluid. And there we go. It still doesn't look too great, it's a little hard to see, and we'll update the lighting here in a second. The base color, I'm going to set this to a slight blue, nothing too crazy, just something like that I think will look nice. The next material I'm going to do is the pipe, so select it, click on new, and then all we have to do is change the base color to maybe a blue, something like this, and then maybe darken it up. Alright, hit the F3 key and type in the word smooth and go shade smooth. Then go over to the modifier section, and we can see if we zoom in here, it doesn't look too great, the edges are a little bit weird. So to fix that, all I'm going to do is add in an edge split, and that will make the edges nice and crisp. There we go. The floor material, we're just going to go the base principled shader. Yep, it already has that. The roughness, I'm going to turn down to 0.1. And then maybe slightly give it a metallic color. There we go. Okay, so for the lighting, I'm going to right click on our lamp and change it to a sun lamp. The energy, I'm going to set it to 2. Go into top view and press the R key and just rotate this way so it's casting a shadow, and then we'll place it right here. So if we go back into camera view, we can still we can see the water a little bit more. If we go over to the world settings, maybe we can brighten it up just a tad, or maybe darken it. There we go. Yeah, let's darken it a little bit and you'll be able to see the water a little bit more. Also, another thing that you're going to want to do is right click on the inflow object. Hold on, let's go into wireframe. Right click on the inflow object and turn it off in the rendered view, because we don't want to be able to see that. We just want to be able to see the pipe. So over here on the right side, I'm going to turn off that camera icon. Okay, we are almost ready to render. I want to do a couple more things over here in the render settings. First off, I'm going to turn ambient inclusion on. That will just give us a little bit more shadows. And then underneath the color management, I'm going to set the look to high contrast. This will make it so that we'll be able to see the water a little bit more, and I think it will look good. And you can also play around with the gamma or the exposure if you wanted to. If you turn down the gamma, it'll darken up the scene a little bit. Same thing for the exposure. Maybe I'll turn down the gamma just a tiny bit. Something like that I think will look good. And then we'll brighten up the exposure by 0.0, let's go 0.05. And I think everything else is good to go. Let's go over to the output settings. For the output, I'm going to select a folder. I'll just go this folder right here. And we'll go tutorial for the name of the animation. There we go. And then for the file format, I'm going to set it to MP4, encoding MP4 right here. Normally, I would set this file format to a PNG and then sequence it after it's done, but Eevee renders very quickly, and so this will only take maybe 10-15 minutes to render 250 frames, so I don't think there's a need to do that. So now that we've done all of the settings, we are good to go. So to render this, I'm going to save my project, go up to render, and then click on render animation, or you can hit the shortcut Control F11. Once you do that, a new window will appear and it will start rendering out our animation. So this is going to take a couple minutes. I'm going to pause the video once again and come back to you once this is finished. Okay, the render has finished, and now to view your result, you can open up the folder that you specified in the output section, or you can go up to render and click on view animation. If you click on that, a window will pop up and you'll be able to see your animation. It looks pretty good. It kind of looks like it's going in slow motion, so what you can do to fix that is just lower the time. If you set this to maybe 8 seconds or something, it will go a little bit faster, but for now I'm just going to leave it as it is. So that's going to do it for this tutorial. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed, make sure you like, comment, and subscribe. And if you have suggestions for other Eevee tutorials or any other tutorials in general, leave them down in the comments. Thanks again for watching, and I'll see you guys in the next video.